So welcome to the August Fall Shield call. We have the usual agenda, and then if we have some time, we want to spend the time looking at maybe some suggestions we can make for US CDI version 7, since submissions for suggestions are open through September 29th. I thought it might be good to um, be able to do that. Admit a couple more people. Um, are there, and then we have open discussion, other topics where we can talk about anything other folks want to bring up. So let's go through here. So on the HL7 side, there are a couple of lab related um, IGs that are doing ballot reconciliation. I think the continuous glucose monitoring project is almost done. The cancer e-pathology reporting is almost done. Um, and then the lab report IG has picked up their calls again every other Friday. Um, and September ballot is still ongoing, and the extension pack for R6 is opening like in 2 days, or it's 3 days, something like that. So that's going to go a little longer than the rest of the ballots. Um, are there any federal government announcements anybody has?
You already covered the deadline for USCDI feedback period, so that's all for me.
Okay, I will make sure I'll put the link to it and things in the slides. Okay, anybody else? Okay, not hearing anything. Any other announcements of interest? I know the link 2.81 was released August 12th, and I put a link in there. Anything else people want to announce? Not hearing any. Then
I
the
don't know if I've
upcoming.
mentioned it before. Sorry,
Oh,
Ricky. I don't know if
no,
I've
no.
mentioned it before, but the registration for the October SNOMED meeting is open.
Okay, I think that's on the, nope, not here, but this is where it goes.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay,
And the expo as well. So it's both the business meeting and the expo in Antwerp, Belgium.
okay. Oops. Okay, I will put the link and the correct dates and things in there later. Any other conferences? We're aware that we've got a Shield presentation webinar set for ADLM for October 22nd. We're excited about that. Andrea and I are working on the slides and trying to get those to the steering committee for approval. There's a group of folks from Shield that are going to do a presentation at AMIA November 15th through the 19th in Atlanta, and I think they're working on the slides. Oops, I gotta let Carmela in. And then the LINE conference is October 7th, and then the SNOMED business meeting and expo registrations open, as Jim mentioned. So any other conferences we should?
Raja put in the chat the HL7 Connectathon.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I don't know if you had that in the HL7 page or not,
I didn't.
but the HL7 conference is coming up in September in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. And the Connectathon is 13th and 14th, right? I think. I'll put the links to registrations also. Any other ones?
That's in person only, right? Andrea?
The Connect-a-thon is in person only. The working group meeting is virtual and in person, but the virtual ones are not all the presentations um, um, are there.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make sure I'll put the virtual so like the plenary is part of the virtual registration for that Monday. And then I think there are two working group sessions each quarter that are accessible virtually. So it's an interesting approach this time. So we'll see how that goes. Any other ones I forgot? If not, any updates from recent meetings? I was hoping Pam's on, but I don't see her. But if anybody was at ADLM, anybody got any updates on ADLM?
I can speak to a little bit. I went down for a day. Pam was there. I saw her, and a few others, and I was at the expo floor, so I wasn't at the actual presentations. Although I did see there were a number of folks. She said she didn't get as good of attendance as she was hoping on her presentations on Livid, but did have a number of folks that did attend her sessions. Uh, there were other ones at the same time, so that may have been an issue. They were like on AI, machine learning, and some of the buzzwords. So a number of those were sold out. So that might be one explanation. The other thing is a number of the IVD vendors. I was asking some of the major ones, the ones that haven't participated in Shield, if they have live-in maps, like inviting them to Shield. And hopefully, at some point we'll get some more participation and getting folks, especially in some of the work groups. I know, especially like Nick said for the IVD Data Hub work group, they would really love to get more vendors involved. So just kind of giving an overview, and then also mention some of the USCDI lab aspects, just so they're aware of things. And the other thing, Jim Case too, there's a SNOMED request for specimen container information, if it should be pre-coordinated or not, coming out of the Netherlands. And as such, since that's come up through HL7 and other channels, stopped by a couple of the vendors that produce blood collection tubes and other specimen collection and asking if they have a list of the products they offer, i.e. the containers from them as a vendor, which ones have additives, which ones do not. Because folks mentioned that it might be good for those containers that have additives that are coming directly from a vendor, i.e. a device, that they have a single SNOMED code mapped to those versus the container and the additive separately. But that's also needed for other cases for reference labs and things. So a lot of things that kind of overlap with Shield, but there's some good discussions, and there were some LIS vendors that were there too, and spoke and stopped by to a number of those. So you can maybe get LIS vendors involved because they're not involved in Shield currently too.
Okay. Oops. Anybody else? Thank you, Andrea. All right. Well, then we'll go to steering committee updates. So we still have the open position for a patient advocate participant. And then we're hoping to maybe add another professional organization. So if there's any suggestions, please keep them coming. The steering committee did vote to update the charter, so I've linked the new charter here for folks so they can read them. It dealt mostly with addressing quorum issues because we had people not being able to participate in the steering committee calls, but then also not necessarily following up on emails and things like that. So we kind of updated the charter to be able to address some of those issues over time. And we're currently voting on the leader working group's white paper that they wrote about how leader is supposed to work. And we're reviewing a document created by the Standards and vocab Working Group. Our next call is next week, Wednesday. Anybody from the steering committee want to have any other things that I forgot? Or does anybody have any questions? I'm not hearing any, so then I'll scooch on to the IBD Data Hub Working Group. And I believe, Nick, you're on, but I think you said the work's still on hold, right?
Yeah, it's still on hold at the moment.
Okay, well, we'll hope that some of the participants can come back to your working group soon.
Yeah, I've started a little bit of outreach to some folks who were participating with little feedback yet, but we'll keep working on it.
I'll keep my fingers crossed. Okay, from Leader, we are meeting once a month now, and we had our meeting this morning, so I have not linked them yet. I will do it before I post these slides to Confluence. We did review some of the comments we got from some steering committee members. Thank you, Jim, on the white paper this morning. And that's pretty much all we managed to get through on today's call. But we are having our next call September 23rd, and we're going to try to work explicitly on the representation of UDI from IVD vendors on our next call. That was one of the things we've been focusing on. Anybody else from the leader group want to add anything? Okay. Communications and branding, Eric, you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Excellent.
Yeah, we've pretty much we have the survey results, completed. I think we're just fine-tuning a PowerPoint presentation that we want to make to the steering committee. We do have a meeting scheduled. We've had to move our meetings around a bit, and Ricky, I need to probably just have you because I can't update the calendar in but we've kind of moved them to Thursdays because they were conflicting once a month with a steering committee meeting. So we do have one scheduled for this Thursday, although I'll probably need to reschedule it because I won't be available. But that's they're at 2 p.m. Eastern on every other Thursday is the new time, and I'll send you that
Okay.
for the calendar. I think the other thing we had provided the flyer with some minor updates to include the LinkedIn page, I believe. And I know there was some feedback on that. And I think Ricky, you had made some edits, but I don't know if there was anything else that I needed to do or the work group needed to do to complete that.
I think there were comments sent back. I don't know that we made any edits specifically
Okay.
in the flyer. I think we just added the comments to the
Yeah, and some of it
PDF.
was, some of those graphics were,
Mhm.
I guess maybe approved graphics from FDA, and we don't have the, they're not, we
Right.
don't have the ability to edit those. So some of that we may just have to, it is what it is in that regard. But I'll go back through that and just make sure
Okay,
we've addressed those.
awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the next thing we talked about working on once we present the survey findings was I think some sort of a resource kit. I think this came up in steering committee for Shield members to share with prospective participants. So maybe like a form type of email, message that could be used with links to our various resources, and maybe potentially some talking points and conversation starters, questions and such for members to use at conferences or in exhibit halls and things like that to try to again do outreach or evangelize Shield and get attract other participation. So that'll be the next thing we want to try to work on.
An elevator speech.
Yeah.
If I could type, it wouldn't work. Okay. Awesome. But the August 27th would be the bi-weekly cadence. I should
Right.
put in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
At 2 p.m. Eastern.
2 to 3 p.m. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Bi-weekly every other week. That's the same thing. Okay. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Standards and vocab update. Is there anybody here? I don't have any, I wasn't able to attend the last one. I guess the next one is on September 16th. But not sure if that's gonna change because it overlaps with HL7 working group, and Julia, I think, will be at the working group meeting. I don't know if Stephen is. So we'll make sure you get an update if that changes. All right, that puts us to other topics. Anybody got anything? Type none here. And this famous slide that I keep here to remind myself that we still haven't done any of this. Call cadence. I think we might want to consider the next All Shield call would be on September 23rd, which actually overlaps with the Sequoia Lab data workshop. So the question is, do we want to, since we have 5 Tuesdays in September, move it to September 30th? Would that be an issue for folks if we did that?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. So we'll do that. And then on December 23rd, I know I'm probably won't be around, and a lot of other folks probably won't either. So should we move the All Shield call to the December 16th and then
Yes.
we'll do that. And then our special topic calls. So the second Tuesday of the month calls, we have a topic for September 9th, which is Sarah's update. And then October 14th is open. And another move one. So November 11th is Veterans Day. Oops, hang on, I gotta let Mukta in. Do we want to move it to the 4th or the 18th? Anybody have a preference? And of
Well, I'm
course,
just-
we're also taking suggestions for topics.
Well, I think November 18th probably won't run into any conflicts with any conferences, given how late it is. And it's kind of that week before Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I think
Do
that's probably
that.
a good choice.
okay. We'll do that. Okay. And that brings us to the end of our regular scheduled program, but since it's September and we have comment period open for USCDI, I thought maybe we'll take some time and work on that. So let me find my mouse, navigate there. So I hope everybody's aware that USCDI version 6 has been published. That is here. And as you can see, the deadline for suggestions is September 29th. So we can do that. And then I also linked here USCDI Plus because that's a place where we could look for data elements to also suggest for inclusion in version 7. So the biggest or one of the bigger changes in version 6 from the laboratory perspective is that the UDI, which was in USCDI for a while already, but only for implantable devices, basically that restrictions to having to be for implantable devices is gone, and it's updated to say it contains a device identifier. I mean it's a device. Yeah, we can go there. Let me not mess it up. Let me just go there. So it's for no longer just implantable, but it's medical devices in general, which is an instrument, machine, appliance, implantable software, other article. And then the UDI is the data element that that usage note's already there. So I guess we don't. What's the difference? I don't know, but there's a. Oh, that this is the thing that changed, I guess, maybe.
The difference in the usage note, if that's what you're looking for, is it used to say it contains one device identifier and one or
Oh.
more. And now it's there are UDIs that are not one-to-one, and it could be a situation where there's not a PI
Right.
in the UDI occasionally.
So it doesn't, so it's at least a device identifier and maybe one or more production IDs. Is that what it should be?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and then we had we had a special call 2 weeks ago where we pulled some of these other bullets together where we're saying we're proposing a phased approach where, it's more important to have the device identifier. If you have a production identifier, then you can include it. But if you don't, then that's what we should focus on. Um, uh, we were talking about maybe clarifying if only the FDA's format is, or if any other ones, or if there's one specific format, or multiple different formats. So basically just get some clarification, which formats are expected must be supported, or just one of them is fine, or all of them, or so just get some clarification around that, I think, is what that bullet was for. And then we wanted to get a bit more clarity on the scope, because right now the definition for medical device is very broad, and so there is
And not everything is going to be defined as an FDA approved medical device, theoretically. That's going to
right.
be, right? So it should be, you're going to focus on is the UDI intended to capture just the FDA cleared instruments and test kits and reagents? Because, are there UDIs issued for other things?
Mhm.
I know
Yeah,
this
like-
group
Yeah.
is focused on IVDs, but
Yeah.
these are not intended to only focus on IVDs.
Right. And to Robin's point, I also was asking some of the IVD vendors at ADLM if they had their UDIs. They're like, oh yeah, you can just copy them from the package insert. And I'm like, as a lab professional, I am not copying a 16-digit or whatever code manually into an LIS per se. So the functionality. But the other thing is it heavily impacts the diagnostics industry, because some of the scope is like what we mentioned here. It could be anything from specimen collection devices, so tubes, containers, those all are considered devices by FDA, and thus should have UDIs from their manufacturers. They're used all over in the pre-analytical process, in the laboratory. Of course, there's the instruments, test kits, reagents, but there's also calibrators and controls, which some folks on Shield, FDA folks have said, oh yeah, we should have those associated with each result value. We've also had, there's all kinds of disposables and supplies. As you know, it's cheaper to have like plastic cuvettes and things that are used in the number test kits. There might be things like pipette tips. There might, you name it.
Plates, 96-hole plates.
Yeah,
top
for micro.
plates. Yep.
Micros would have tons for infectious diseases. So it depends on the type of test. If it's something that's more automated, it might be more, less from the instrument side. But then you have things that are manual, like the microscopes. They're considered a device. I know people don't think about things like that, slides. So that would be like pretty much all pathology, genomics.
Yeah, and ID, you're also talking about auger types too. You're talking, you got blood, you got this, you got that. Yeah, it just goes on and on and on.
So we did mention this on one of the leader calls when USCDI first came out, and we agreed, that would be everything in the kitchen sink, and that wouldn't be from a scope what we would expect. So I think that's something that would be good to kind of have some clarification in the comments. If it's something that you're just going to narrowly define it and what you're narrowly going to define it as. So it doesn't get
Andrea,
crazy. Sorry, Nick.
So no, you're fine. I think it's an interesting discussion, because the other thing to keep in mind as well from a multinational manufacturer perspective is that, literally anything that's regulated, including in the EU and including in Australia, has their UDI rule coming out. So it's you're correct. I mean, it's any regulated device effectively that would have a UDI. But you just mentioned, we'd want to narrow the scope. Can you help me understand what you mean by that in this context? Because again, I think like the terminology gets slightly confusing if we're going to use UDI, but then trying to narrow the scope. Those are effectively in conflict, right? Because UDI applies to all devices, all regulated devices, including IVDs. So
Right.
can you help me understand what you mean by kind of limit the scope?
Yeah, so this broad definition and like for Shield, like with including UDI information in Livid and Leader, the intent is more for associated with the test result value. But Leader, they're like, we don't want to include calibrators, controls. We don't want to have UDIs for all those things that are associated with an individual test result, each individual test result. The discussion in Shield has been for the instruments and then what they call the test kit or reagent. And so that's kind of been the focus on Shield for that. But to your point, I mean, again, diagnostics is very big and broad. So, you know, for medical devices, and I don't know too if ONC has any insight or as to what this, lab isn't listed, here. It's just pretty broad for the vendor certification perspective. And so I assume that there's going to need to be some type of clarification if this UDI functionality from the medical devices for HIT certification, how it might be used from a laboratory perspective in the future.
Yeah.
Because that's not clear and it's not required right now. So
Nick, to your point, I think the differentiation might be a little bit more at the medical devices class level, rather than at the UDI level itself. I mean, at the UDI level, we could say, those UDIs or the UDIs at minimum should have the DI if they, if you don't happen to have the PI for something,
Right.
maybe not quite as bad. So that's the restriction or scope limiting factor on the UDI element. But the medical devices, this definition could maybe be made a little clearer that it excludes disposable supplies when they're not like actually producing a diagnostic, directly producing a diagnostic result, right? So the pipettes and the pipette tips.
Yeah, a 96 well plate that isn't involved in the optical reading, right? You're not using it is a carrier essentially of the reaction. Because there's like I think 16 different types of 96 well plates that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So some of them are absolutely instrumental to getting the result. Some of them are not.
Right.
So,
that distinction I think makes that helps me understand. Thank you.
So it actually that's good because our feedback then needs to be on the medical device definition and not so much on the UDI. And Sarah, go ahead.
I'm just thinking so if the data element in USCDI is saying that the capability for exchange needs to be there, but this is a group that has the expertise to take it to that next level, to help think about what the guidance around capture should be, because the data element being in USCDI has nothing to do with which UDI should be captured when. That's the next step. But how can this group collect that expertise? And then let me work on my end with ASTP to see how we might be supportive of getting that guidance amplified in the right ways.
Okay, that's excellent. So let's see, we're talking about this and this, so it's not. Um, or something, I don't remember exactly what you said, Robin. Is that
Well, you think about like a box and ship kit, right?
right?
I mean, you don't necessarily have to go down to the next level of, what's the reagent, what's this, that. It could all function under one UDI because
Right.
a system, right? So that could live under one UDI. I'm thinking about things that have different complexity, right? So like you've got to do serological test for Lyme disease, right? So that's
Right.
maybe a kit. It's maybe not. So you would have to do different components to that, and each of the components would have to have different UDIs
Mm-hmm.
theoretically. Um, Same with a laboratory developed procedure. You would have to have the different components of that have UDIs. So
Mm-hmm.
you'd almost, oh God, back to coding, you'd almost stack them
Mm-hmm.
essentially in order to do that. And the complexity of that for the laboratorian is going to get pretty nuts pretty fast.
Yep. But the feedback was that we think the ones that are, you know,
Directly, yeah, right,
directly producing diagnostic results, those would be the ones we really should follow,
right.
or
So,
focus on. Yeah.
right. So like your DNA extraction kit, what do you use, right? If it's a
Right.
box and ship kit, right? And then you go to, um, what kind of panel are you running? So that I can think of places where you could pull the UDI out. Are the pipettes you use to transfer the DNA onto the thing critically important?
Yeah. I
Yes
mean,
and no, yes and no,
yeah.
but
Right.
you're going to choose the tips that are going to do the right thing. So like that's just part of
Right.
good laboratory practice.
Right.
So I don't know that getting to that level of detail is going to help
Right.
the situation. It's data that I don't know needs to be captured. Did you
Right.
use a good extraction method? Did you use a panel that's going to yield clinical results if employed in a CLIA lab under proper supervision by an appropriate professional? I think those are the pieces you want to capture.
Yeah.
Right. And there's certain things, like you said, Robin, are covered under CLIA as the
Right.
test system language when you validate things from a test. And the other thing, just to mention is in Shield, we've decided lab developed tests because that's a
Are
whole
out. Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
out of scope. But for this, they could be in scope the way it's
Right.
written. Because it's just any health IT, and those are reported on
Correct.
a regular basis and include a lot of the things that you're talking about too for like molecular genetics among other tests. So,
IHC in some cases. Yeah.
right. Yeah, a lot of things in pathology too, potentially. And
Micro.
so
Yeah.
micro, yep. So one of the things I was just thinking about too, as you're describing, is there's a lot of pre-treatment of specimens that occur in the laboratory
Yes.
as part of the total testing process. So I'm just thinking back when I did cyclosporin testing at Duke, I'm at see, I think was it mass spec or HPLC, I forget. But you have your specimen, you have chemicals and reagents that
Mm-hmm.
you're following your laboratory validated procedure, but you have, 10, 15 different, um, chemicals
Mm-hmm.
or reagents that you're using. They're not, vendor produced per se. They could be.
Correct.
There are some vendors that also do cyclosporin testing on your chemistry analyzers. So you could go to that route too. That happens a lot with like, say, screening drug testing for therapeutic drug monitoring, and then
Mm-hmm.
confirmatory has been talking on the LOINC calls. So and then there's other regulations related to SAMHSA and stuff like that. But there's just, as we know, laboratory is complex, and there's not like one simple way to
Mhm.
perform for everything.
Yep, that's
Unfortunately.
correct. Yeah, like I'm thinking of like separational plasma. Is the UDI associated to the model of the centrifuge important, or is it important that you spun it for the right time at the right temperature for at the right RPM?
Mhm.
I think that's
Right.
more important, right? But that's not a UDI issue. So like it's going to take some teasing out as to what the important things are.
And to that point, it might be helpful to know what's the end goal or purpose that you're trying to
Correct.
achieve.
Correct.
So, what problem are you trying to solve? Um, and where do you expect this information to be utilized? And is it designed to solve the problem and provide the solution without too much burden on
Okay.
everybody?
You can label whatever you want. Does it need a label? Does it help you to give it a label in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to think with the patient in mind, because that's really what it's all about.
Right. Okay. Anything else? I think we need to like wordsmith how that, ends up being the feedback, but those are really good thoughts, and they're probably more usage notes than definitions. Um, um, any other thoughts on UDI or medical devices? This needs to outend one. Okay, so then the other um, item we've previously submitted comments on is the specimen acceptability. Um, that we had. Um, this is the items that I think we submitted prior, so I just copied them here. So I don't know if we want to submit the same ones again versus.
Has
Looking at,
anything changed since the last time we submitted it?
no, they didn't make any changes based on this comment. So the question is, how useful is it to say, well, we still think what we said last version applies
Yeah,
to this
if
version.
at first you don't succeed.
Try again.
Yep.
The
I
question
think,
is maybe, is it helpful to rephrase something that might get better impact? I don't know.
well, it's a question of how strong the arguments are. If the arguments aren't strong enough, maybe giving some examples of where the challenge is given the current state
Mhm.
might elucidate the issue for them.
Mhm.
The other thing that's come up is we've had some more detailed discussions on this item too, and where specimen condition kind of feeds into specimen reject reason from a CLIA perspective is you can be used in two different ways. And I think that may be something we want to call out. One is if say there's a clotted tube and a single tube collected for like a CBC, it's going to get canceled and request for a reorder redraw because the specimen condition is you can't do the testing because it's
Mhm.
clotted. And it's also used as a cancellation reason for the order. In that regard, then, I don't know if this item might need to be associated with the lab orders class that's also in USCDI now, because it's related to that on the ordering side, even though it's, again, you kind of tying multiple things together. And then where it's the order is a panel, when we talk about the BMP with hemolysis, you can't perform the potassium, but you can perform the other things. And so it's used in multiple ways too. One, for the non-potassium lab results that are part of a BMP, basic metabolic panel profile, to show that this was performed on a hemolyzed specimen. For the potassium, you can't report it out if it's moderately hemolyzed or grossly hemolyzed. And so then it is also captured in the comment for why you're not performing that particular test result. So there's, again, multiple ways that the specimen condition is utilized.
You also have the situation where you, like, I'm thinking biomarker testing, where your QNS comes after you run the test sometimes, right? You look at the tissue, you think you're going to be able to get DNA out of it, and you get to the end and you just can't get good sequence out of it. So you can't always tell by looking if you're going to get decent DNA or RNA out the other end.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that this group might have some more insight on, so thank you, Robin, for kind of sharing some more examples, is when you're reporting, different fields are used from a workflow reporting where this would be used too. And I'll say one other thing to you from a diagnostics, since Nick, you're still on too, I think, there are IVD vendors, and I was just looking for Roche. They actually have the hemolysis icteric lipemia HIL index that's reported, as do many vendors. It's reported different ways by each vendor IVD system, but it comes across as a test result. So it might be another test result as part of that BMP panel that gets reported if it's automated from the instrument. And so in that regard, it would be treated like a lab result with the LOINC encoding functionality and under the lab result portion of USCDI, and not necessarily the specimen condition item of USCDI with the SNOMED coding. So and then if it's in a comment, I don't know of an LIS that can actually encode those comments with any terminologies. So when we think about vendor functionality that they're going to get certified against, if it's in just a text blob or comment, how would the encoding be applied?
Yeah, that's covered under here somewhere. So let me just put this down here.
And I'm thinking back to, like, I mean, there's still a lot of old Roche cobosses around. That's that stuff coming off. How's that going to get pulled in? And I think that's all text.
Yeah. Anything else on specimen condition availability? Oh, acceptability, sorry, specimen acceptability.
Wrong specimen type. Is it that's in there somewhere where they send you the wrong tube, they send you
Yeah, that's
wrong body fluid. Okay, I just wanted to be sure. Okay.
well, that's I mean, that's one of the reasons why, it's really two different things, because
Right.
the specimen that I'm sending you in that tube can be just fine. right?
Right.
But I can't
it's
use that
two.
specimen for this test.
Right,
So,
exactly. Yeah, those are
right.
two totally different things.
And so that makes it hard to have it called specimen
one
condition
field.
acceptability, right?
They're two
Because
different things.
yeah.
They're,
So
they are two different things. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because something that's been sitting on my loading dock for 2 days is not in good condition, even though it might be in an acceptable format.
correct. Right.
And then there's like specimen reject reason. It's kind of related to the acceptability piece of it. It may not have anything to do with actually like what's in the tube, but it may be to like a labeling issue, like requirements for blood bank specimens. You need multiple identifiers and things that are another reason why a specimen is rejected.
Oh, everybody labels their tubes all the time, right? We always get labeled tubes all the time. No, that happens unfortunately a lot. Human error has to be adjusted for. Dual identifiers too is another one. You got one
Yeah.
identifier, but not two.
Yeah. Not making an EG. Yeah. Okay. And that puts us at the top of the hour. I guess we'll have to kind of condense this. This Confluence page is available for anybody to add content to, so please feel free to do that. And the steering committee will keep churning through this and try to get the suggestions pulled together. Our next call is the special topic call where Sarah is going to talk to us about, and then we'll have the All Shield call next month on September 30th as we decided to move it. So I'll talk to you guys all then. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, Ricky.